Final installment of our How to Design and Print Your Own Fishing Lure and Blender series. I have included a link to the entire playlist in the video description below if you haven't watched those other videos. We're going to cover everything from getting the printer off the lure, cleaning it up, sanding it, painting it, getting the final UV resin coating on it, and then going out and fishing it. At the end of this video, I'll include some action shots of the lure in the water. Let's jump into it. Alright, I've got the print off the printer. I haven't done anything to it other than just rip the supports and the brim off of it. You'll see that it's not perfect. It does have a lot of scarring from where those supports were that PETG really likes to stick to itself. You'll also notice that my printer's not perfect. My print isn't perfect. See this ringing that I have here? There's some rough edges here and there. It doesn't have to be perfect. When you get it off the printer, yours may look a lot better than this, and that's wonderful. Yours may look like this, or it might look worse. That's okay. You know, it's a 3D print. We can do some sanding, we can do some filling. Just work with what you have. These guys I did do some test fitting on these. They were just a hair small. I could have went into Blender and used the Boolean modifier to trim that block down a little bit, as I had showed you in the slicer video, and reprinted it. But what I did was I just took a razor blade and just shaved slight little bits off of that edge and off of that edge until it fit. You'll see there is a little bit of a gap right here. That's okay. We're going to be able to take care of that with some super glue, maybe some super glue and baking soda. This one is a tight fit here, but I think that's how I'm going to want it. So I've got the ballast. We had 1.5 in the back. These split shots are rolling all over the place. We had 1.5 in the back, 3 in the front. I went ahead and took pliers and closed these shut so that I wanted them to be able to rattle a little bit in the chamber. When they come in the bag, they're open a little bit so that you can put them on your fishing line. And they fit and they're just the same, but this gives them a little bit more of a slop so that they can move back and forth. So I'm going to drop this young one in there, that little guy in there. And I'm going to super glue this on. Like that. That little gap there, we'll fill it with, if it doesn't close when we're putting the super glue on it, we'll fill it with super glue and baking soda. I like to have it just a little tight so that I can feel it and see if it's flush everywhere it needs to be. And if I have to, with it being snug, you can just push it over a little bit. You don't got to worry about it slipping out. You'll see right here, I've got a little bit of an edge. That's okay. We're gonna do some sanding on it. So I'm gonna super glue these pieces in. I'll sand it. I'm gonna sand on the top, and I might put some body filler in there. I don't know if you can see it. Obviously you can see the roughness, but there's a couple of spots there that I could see. Right here, I could see, I don't know if I can get that Right there, I think that's a pin. Those are two little pinholes that go all the way through. So I was discussing in the other videos about how it's not always going to be watertight. That's why we need the epoxy or the resin or whatever you're going to coat. I picked up this super glue. I usually use different kinds of super glue. What works really well normally for gluing in pieces like this is like Gorilla Glue gel. This one I picked up at Walmart the other day because it was cheap. It was for 7 ounces. It was, I think, like $3 compared to $5 for around 5 ounces of the Gorilla Glue gel. But Loctite super glue works well too. I usually, when I go to the dollar store or to Walmart, I'll go look for something, try new products, and see if we can find cheaper ways to do it. We'll see how this goes. I did glue 2 pieces of resin from my resin printer together. It was like a mini figurine and a base. I glued the figurine onto the base, and it held fine there. We'll see how it does with the PLA. I'll get this super glued. I'm going to do some sanding on it, some post-processing. I might do the body filler here, and then I'll get back to you guys in a little bit before we do the painting. So I got the pieces super glued in there. You can hear the rattle. I really like to have a side-to-side rattle and not a front-to-back rattle. You know, when you're working the lure and it's attached here to the line tie, and it's moving like this in the water, right? So really you want that left and right rattle. There is a front and back rattle in here too, but it's not that important. On a jerk bait it can be, you know. Anyway, I've sanded it. I went over it with 60 grit and then 240 grit. I do have the little gaps in the seams right here. I'm gonna fill that up with super glue and baking soda. Super glue and baking soda, I'm sure you've seen it. It works really well on 3D prints. It creates a good structural bond. You put some kind of slow drying, not necessarily instant adhesive. You put a slower drying, very viscous liquid super glue down. You sprinkle some baking soda, and it's like an activator, like a catalyst. You know, it bonds it almost instantly, and it gives you a filler that you can sand. I'm undecided if I'm going to do the same thing up here. I thought about body filler because these are a little deep, but I may go over it with some super glue and baking soda and see. And then after that, we get it sanded back down again. We clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to paint. You know, it's real important to keep your oily fingers off of your lure when you're going to be painting. You need a good surface for a good oil-free surface for the paint to adhere to, even the primer. So once we get done doing all the work to it, getting these seams filled up with super glue and baking soda, getting a good final sand on it, I'll put on some gloves, wash it down with isopropyl alcohol. Actually, no, let's step back. What we'll do is, prior to getting that prep ready for paint, get all the sanding done, we're going to put in the hook hangers, line tie, so that we have something to hold it with. But after that, when you give it that final clean down before paint, it's important to have your gloves on prior to starting the cleaning process, because you're going to get oil and dirt and grime, and it may not be noticeable to your eye, but it will be noticeable later when your paint job starts looking like crap. You know, the secret to paint is everybody says it's all in the prep work, and I got some prep work ahead of me. So see you guys in a little bit. See, I got the line ties epoxied in place. I hit it with the filler primer and a sandable primer. Let's see if I go over here. Do this outside, obviously, in a well ventilated area. This is what I used. It works well. I don't remember if I picked that up at the auto parts store or at Walmart. I've had that one for a while. You give it a coat or two, and in about an hour you can start sanding on it, and give it another coat or two, sand on it some more. So you can see that where I super glued and baking soda, the cracks, finishing that off. Right here where I had some ringing at the top. On the top, I was actually pretty happy with how far I got that down with the 60 grit. And then I did do super glue and baking soda over the top of it. And then still with the primer. I wasn't too concerned about cleaning out the eye, because the eye socket, because the eye's going to sit in there. So I wasn't too concerned about cleaning up those layer lines because they'll get covered up. But the rest of it is, I'm happy with how smooth it is. So next I'm going to hit it with a white primer. Just a generic white primer. That one's from Hobby Lobby. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have bought a cheaper one from Walmart. I don't remember when I bought that. I said in an earlier video that I would show you guys how to paint these without an airbrush, or I'll show you that you didn't have to have an airbrush to paint it, and I was going to show you how to do one with brushes and sponges, but I'm thinking this one we're going to do rattle can. Got some extra colors. We'll do a rattle can paint job on this one, and then on the next one we'll do sponges and brushes, and then the ones after that I'll probably just go back to doing airbrush, because that's how my preferred method, but we don't all have an airbrush, and I didn't have one, you know. But either tonight or in the morning I'll lay down the primer and the rest of the colors, and I'll come back and show you before we do the top coat. Okay, so I went ahead and did a rattle can paint job, and just used the stuff that we had on the shelves. We had some cheap, like $2 can paints, and I've got some lessons learned, some fails for you guys. So it was black on top. It was like a real dark green, and then white on the bottom. And then I just had some cardboard on hand, and I tore it into give it that little stencil shape. If I was going to use spray paint, if you were going to go to the store and buy spray paint to use, get matte or satin. I would say that gloss or high gloss is definitely not preferred. I don't know that the epoxy is going to stick well to the high gloss without, you know, lightly sanding it and taking that gloss off. Well, what I had was gloss, and what I would prefer to do would be to take like steel wool, like 0.000 or 4/0 steel wool, the real fine stuff, and just take that sheen or that shine off. I didn't have any, so I took just the finest sandpaper I had on hand, and I wet sanded a little bit, and you can see where it took a little bit too much off. There's a little scratch there, and right here by this eyeball it took a little bit off. Same thing back here, but it's okay. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. The worst paint job doesn't matter. It's gonna catch fish. You could leave them white and not paint them at all. It's gonna catch fish. So I'm not making excuses for my beautiful paint job here. I'm just saying that there's no need to feel that it needs to be perfect, because you know nature is not perfect, right? I put the eyes on. What I think is important is underneath the eye, like they come with an adhesive backing, but I like to put a gel super glue down, like a bed of super glue there, because what'll happen is you put the eye on, it's not going to sit flat on the backside. Then when you put the epoxy or the resin on for the final coat, there's going to be little bits of air pockets trapped under there that are going to come out, and you're going to get air bubbles around your eye. So put a bit of super glue there, let that squeeze out. Not a lot. It does just a little bead of super glue there, because it's going to squeeze out, and if it gets on the eye, it's going to create fogginess. So it's going to squeeze out, and then I like to take Q-tips and just kind of work the super glue away from the eye. You know, like wipe once, get a different Q-tip. Don't ever like wipe the eye with a Q-tip that already has super glue on it. Anyway, so the biggest fail here is I had the last minute idea to paint this with spray paint, because I was like, you know, a lot of people aren't going to have an airbrush. A lot of people have spray paint on hand. I've got some extra rattle cans on hand. Let's just spray with what we got, which is okay. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly acceptable. It's going to catch fish. That's not the problem. The problem is that the reason that I don't really care for using spray paint is that it takes longer to dry. Like these cans, I think it said 48 hours, right? And I want to make sure that it's dry and that it's clear before I put the resin on there. And I didn't want to wait 48 hours, so I got impatient, and I've got a heat lamp, and I thought, well, I'll put it underneath the heat lamp. And I did, and then I got called out of the room, got distracted, and forgot to go back. And it created a hot spot. I don't know if you can see it right here. It's got a bubble here. The light's just flickering. It's got a bubble right here. Oh well, let's slap some UV resin on it and take it out and see if it'll fish. This is some video of it being slow trolled along the boat. I think it's got some good action. The only thing that I really was not happy about was on a very slow retrieve into the reel, it doesn't have much swim or flash or action. If it's a slow retrieve, it's just coming in straight. A medium to a faster retrieve, it does have some really good side-to-side flash, and it's got a good slow sink, and it works really well on a twitch. You know, just like a jerk bait. It's basically what we're going for here was a lipless jerk bait, not a lipless crankbait, but a lipless jerk bait. But I'm happy with it. I don't know what I would change here. I enjoyed it. If you guys like this, please consider subscribing. Right here in the middle, I'm going to put a link to our next video. What I want to do is I want to take this same shape that we've created, and I think I'm going to show you how to turn it into a crankbait, like a medium diving crankbait. And in the future, we'll look at making it a wake bait, a 2-piece swim bait, a 3-piece swim bait. I'm just going to show you how you can take a simple design like this and grow it into multiple different things. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun. See you guys in the future.